Welcome, Vintage Hollywood Archive. The daring, bold, and beautiful have always found their space in Hollywood's world of glitz and glamour. However, behind the scenes, there has always been a lot of competitive rivalry amongst the talents, as they fight for seats at the throne, real or imagined. Such has been the case for Italian actresses Sophia Loren and Gina Lollobrigida, since their glory days in the 1950s up to present day. What fueled Sophia Loren and Gina Lollobrigida's rivalry? Make sure to watch the video until the end and leave your thoughts in the comments. If you are new here, join our wonderful community by subscribing to the Vintage Hollywood Archive channel. Lifelong feud between Sophia Loren and Gina Lollobrigida. Sophia was 7 years younger than Gina Lollobrigida. Both came from being Italian models to being the main discussion of media comparisons. At the peak of their long-running feud, they said hurtful things about each other. Gina once said, "We are as different as a racehorse and a goat." On the other hand, Sophia often highlighted that she was bustier than her arch-rival, with Gina recently reigniting the long-standing feud on her 90th birthday by saying she was the number one and taking a few veiled shots at Loren's husband's involvement in her coming up. We shall take a sneak peek at both their fascinating lives before we look into what spiked their long-life rivalry. First of all, let's begin with a brief overview on both their adventurous lives. The mass media is largely blamed for the feud between the two buxom beauties of Italian film, as their press often pitted the two against each other over several comparisons. The tabloids, publicists, and producers in the 1950s always compared and contrasted them on who was prettier, bustier, curvier, or who had the most impact, clout, or fame. This obviously went to their heads, as now they had to work competitively. Needless to say, several magazines would run charts detailing metrics against their contemporaries, who included Marilyn Monroe, Brigitte Bardot, Anita Ekberg, and Jane Mansfield. Polarization in film and media has been long known to stimulate higher public interest, so the rivalry was primarily meant to fuel the marketing machinery of the Hollywood producers. However, the collateral damage was that it developed into real-life rivalry between the two even off the screen. When the two first met in person at the Berlin Film Festival in 1954, Gina refused to have her photograph taken with Sophia, a matter that was resolved when Yvonne De Carlo, an American actress, volunteered to be between the two warring divas. In the same year, Gina would later walk out of a separate event in London, where she had been requested to partake in a bust measuring contest. To which a 20-year-old Loren asked, "Why is Gina mad at me? It's true, my measurements excel hers. But is that a reason to be furious with me?" By the late 50s, Loren had arguably overtaken Gina according to box office metrics of the time. On the other hand, Howard Hughes sold RKO, but still refused to release Gina from her contract. This may have been a contributory factor to the slowdown in her professional career. Gina's situation wouldn't allow her to work in Hollywood until 1959. Meanwhile, Loren was taking all her potential role, which further fueled the rivalry because opportunities and business were now strongly involved. In this era, she often filed several petty lawsuits, which may be at least 10. She managed to keep that grudge into old age. On her 90th birthday, during an interview, she reportedly said, "We are different. We made completely different careers. I wanted to be an artist more than anything else. I wanted a career on another level." She also said, "I was not looking for any rivalry against anyone. I was the number one. I succeeded only thanks to myself, without any producer supporting me. I did everything alone," she said Lollobrigida, which seemed to be a veiled shot at Loren's late husband, Carlo Ponti, who made large investments towards Loren's early career. To understand the long-running feud of Gina Lollobrigida and Sophia Loren, we have to establish a bit of background information on whom they were as individuals in their personal lives, their separate experiences and upbringings. There may be, of course, aspects of their come-up that are similar or that intersect, and some that make them unique in terms of their experience. So, let's begin with Gina Lollobrigida. Her full name was Luigina Lollobrigida, and she was born in Subiaco, Italy. Gina Lollobrigida, prior to dropping Jaws in cinema, she turned heads as a model before appearing to small roles in cinema as a teenager. Her graduation to the big league was when she began making appearances in collaborative American and European productions, which ignited her mainstream career. she always reinvented herself in her long career, from modeling as a teen, to acting and eventually even picking up the camera herself to try her hand at photography. None of the twists and turns in her long-standing career ever made her lose her ambition. Later in life, she would give back by venturing into philanthropy. Lollobrigida is a true inspiration to anyone who's ever thought about making a big change later in life. Her accumulated jewelry in 2013 contributed approximately $5 million to stem cell research, amongst other things. What about Sophia? Sophia Villani Ciccolone, born in Rome, Italy in 1934, became the actress we all knew as Loren. Having spent her childhood in southern Italy, in the port town of Pozzuoli, she had a glimpse of Italian naval operations and bombings of munition dumps, which were commonplace and frequent during World War II. In the aftermath of the war, Loren was a waiter in her grandmother's pub. Artistry must have run in her blood, because in the pub, her mother played piano, whilst her sister sang for the American GI clientele. Like her future rival, she also entered into modeling. In 1950, she contested in the Miss Italia beauty pageant as Sophia Loren, and won the title of Miss Elegance 1950. In similar fashion, she then entered the film industry under that moniker, outstandingly working as an uncredited extra in the Swords and Sandals epic Quo Vadis in 1951. The small roles soon amalgamated into bigger roles, leading to 1953, where she began working under the name Sophia Loren. This name change was meant to appeal to American audiences, and has subsequently earned her praise for her debut lead role in Aida. In her formative years, she also did The Gold of Naples in 1954, which became one of her earliest highlights. It was directed by Vittorio De Sica. She also initially shared the big screen with Marcello Mastroianni in Too Bad, She's Bad, and he would later become a frequent co-star. Loren's work rate was phenomenal, having had 11 films released in 1954 alone. The quantity, backed by quality of her performances, inevitably caught Hollywood's attention. Gina Lollobrigida became undoubtedly one of the most celebrated symbols of beauty on screen in the 1950s and 60s, having starred among Hollywood elite males including Frank Sinatra, Sean Connery, Rock Hudson, Burt Lancaster, and Tony Curtis, amongst others. Her resume included performances as Esmeralda in The Hunchback of Notre Dame in 1956 and as Sheba in Solomon and Sheba in 1959. Alongside with fellow actresses such as Sophia Loren, Brigitte Bardot, and Anita Ekberg, Gina and her contemporaries made exotic European glamour attractive in the imagination of American moviegoers. Sophia, on the other hand, having featured in over 100 films, some have regarded Sophia Loren as the epitome of Italian beauty for over half a century, a glamorous force in European and Hollywood films alike. A great body of her success is evident in the films of Vittorio De Sica, who dubbed her the essential Italian woman. Other than him, she also worked with other Italian directors such as Federico Fellini. She starred opposite Marcello Mastroianni, Cary Grant, Clark Gable, Peter Sellers, Paul Newman, Charlton Heston, and other luminaries. Not only did she earn European accolades, Hollywood endorsed her with Academy Award nominations, among them a Best Actress win for Cicciara La, Two Women, in 1960, and later an honorary Oscar for numerous offerings to both American and Italian film. Gina's first widely accepted English-language offering was the 1953 film Beat the Devil, but however, she had an earlier shot at English films in 1950, when Howard Hughes signed her with RKO. However, but she didn't detail the deal and declined migrating to Hollywood. Hughes wouldn't release her from the contract. Thus, for the first 3 years of her professional career, she mostly filmed European films. In 1961, she received a Golden Globe for her performance in Come September, where she played the role of Rock Hudson's Roman mistress together with Sandra Dee and Bobby Darin. Even though her film career had a slight hiatus in the 70s, she resurged on in the 1980s when obtained a role intended for Sophia Loren in Falcon Crest. Sophia Loren met the love of her life, Carlo Ponti, when he was already married with 2 children. She was 16 years old at the time. Initially, he was just a producer who took interest nurturing her as an actress, before it evolved into a romantic relationship. He groomed her to have manners, modified her accent, encouraged her to read literature about art, and insisted she learned English. Eventually, despite their 22-year age gap, they had an affair which ultimately led to Carlo seeking permission to divorce from the Vatican, as was necessary at the time. He faced a lot of resistance in this attempt, and so they moved to Mexico in 1957, where Ponti divorced his first wife and married Loren. Upon returning home, their marriage wasn't recognized as legal in Italy. They were declined the right to appear together in public, as Sophia was accused of illegally cohabitating whilst her husband was accused of bigamy, which led them into voluntary exile. They left the country. The rebellious lovebirds went to France and acquired French citizenship. Ponti's ex-wife, in order to file for divorce, also changed citizenship to French. Thus, in 1966, Sophia and Carlo got married again, and the marriage became official. They unfortunately lost 2 children to miscarriage. In 2007, Carlo passed away, so she became a widow. Gina Lollobrigida once said, "I've had many lovers and still have romances. I am very spoiled. All my life, I've had too many admirers." She indeed had many lovers at different points in time in her career. She was previously married to Javier Rigo and Milko Skofic. She also had romantic relationships with Frank Sinatra, Yul Brynner, Christian Bernard, George Kaufman, Fidel Castro, Burt Lancaster, Henry Kissinger, and Eddie Fisher. The list of encounters she has previously had includes David Cassidy, Buzz Aldrin, Peter Lawford, Orson Welles, Gary Cooper, and Jerry Lewis. Lollobrigida, in 2015, once accused former lover Rafols of staging a secret wedding in Barcelona with someone who looked like her in a plot to attain access to her fortune. "It was never a proper relationship. He was never very affectionate towards me. He kept his distance," she told the court. She claimed to be unaware of the marriage until she saw the court documents were made public domain online. She, however, lost the case in 2017, but planned on making an appeal. How have both contributed to philanthropy and charity? Both actresses have been involved in several philanthropic and charitable acts. Sophia was once named a UNHCR Goodwill Ambassador. She used her celebrity to attract global attention to the plight of refugees. Her first mission was to Somalia, which is still a nation in crisis. Loren lives in Geneva. She has also been involved with many other initiatives such as the Philip Jones Griffiths Foundation, which preserves a large gallery of war photos. Gina has also done a lot of heavy lifting as far as charitable work and giving back. Having accrued a lot of lustrous jewelry in 2013, she decided to sell it for approximately $5 million, which she then donated to stem cell research. The most extravagant piece that night was a set of natural pearl and diamond pendant earrings that were valued at a record $2.4 million. Lollobrigida took the podium to explain why she waited so long to sell her jewelry. She said, "Jewels are meant to give pleasure, and for many years I had enormous pleasure wearing mine. Many people tried to persuade me to sell them, but for a very long time I was unwilling. What changed was seeing a little girl called Sophia suffering from a disorder, which could only be helped by stem cell treatment which she was unable to receive in Italy. Selling my jewels to help raise awareness of stem cell therapy, which can cure so many illnesses, seems to me a wonderful use to which to put them. It is my hope that the Italian Parliament will approve this groundbreaking treatment so that children and adults in Italy should have free access to it without having to travel abroad at great expense. It now gives me great pleasure to see that these jewels will create a legacy which will live on after me and continue to do good." The veteran access photographer and sculptor also has philanthropic initiatives which include projects for UNESCO, UNICEF, and Mother Teresa's charity. Hollywood was privileged to work with 2 phenomenal women who revolutionized a lot in pop culture. It is sad that they never got to see eye to eye, as some people are big fans of both actresses. Whilst the media enjoys polarization for profit, in their case, it robbed us of a chance of seeing 2 icons from the same origins work together. Perhaps we will see a reunion in this lifetime, but some feuds are meant to be forever. Who do you think was number 1? If you like this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you are new here.